Good evening, everyone. I am Phil John. Welcome to another episode of Phil John's V.I.P. Thank you for joining me tonight. As always, I appreciate you stopping in, tuning in, and if you don't tune in, thank you for looking at the replays and sharing. Tonight, I have finally got this brother to come into the VIP and join me. He is none other than Mike Diaz, known as Juan Bago. I've known this brother now for about a little close to 2 decades, and he's a well-respected person in the industry, and he's the brother that is kind of like Oz. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see him, but he's working his magic and he's pulling all the strings from behind the curtain. He is the epitome of what I call uh, someone who speaks softly but carries a big stick. Very low key when you meet him in person, but he waves his wand and just creates magic. And he's been doing that now for close to 2 decades, if not over that. So I'm so happy to finally get Mike Diaz to Phil John's VIP. And I want to introduce those of you who don't know him a little bit about this kind of, let's just say, Latinx Norman Lear. That's what I'd like to call him. So I'm going to get him in and we could talk. Mike, just hit a request. I see you in, but you got a request. Come on, bro. I know you know how this works. Just request to join and we'll get it started. I know it's late. Hopefully he's just became a new father, so I hope the baby is asleep and in bed and he's not in. Here we go, Mike. I see you. Here we go. And aka Juan Bago. Where you at, Mike? Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Pop up, pop up.
Yeah, am I connected?
You are you are connected, brother. What's up? How you been? Look at you. You are looking
I'm just I'm just
you
making
are
sure that my
looking
son
like
doesn't
daddy
wake
duty
up.
right now.
I put him to sleep there.
I know, of course,
Hey, it's
of
him
course.
first.
We haven't
So
spoken to each other in so many years now. I know that you got married to your beautiful wife, who
I
I had the
know.
privilege of working with years ago as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
are just kind of
yeah, man.
continuing to do things and produce from behind the scenes. So how are you, brother?
I am I
Yeah.
guess since being a father, it's a lot. I'm good. I'm blessed. He's healthy. It's such an experience seeing this being. He turned a year last month, and just rediscovering simplistic things that we take for granted when we're adults. So I'm good. So I can't complain because I decided with my wife to have a child in my 40s, and so I can't complain. Like I this is the journey that we chose, and he definitely makes my back hurt from
You seem
getting to
full.
try to
I
walk.
I, I
So
can seem full, and you
it's
seem like you're filled with joy, brother.
yeah. Yeah, man, it's beautiful. It's so funny because my mom, uh, Dominican aunts, they live on WhatsApp. So I'm always sharing, videos and pictures and stuff. And my mom tells me now, mind you, I'm in my 40s now. My mom has never told me this, but because I have a son now, she's like, I was looking at your pictures when you were. I see it now. The things that you do now, I look back and make a sense. And so it's full circle because I'm looking at my son and he's such a ham. No matter if we're in a restaurant, on the train, he
Well,
just has to
but he
he's
has
just a
two
ham.
talented parents,
And so
bro. So
I'm
he gets
like,
it from both sides.
so it makes complete sense. So it's very interesting to watch him and see the journey
That's awesome. I'm
he's
glad
gonna take.
glad
So
to hear
yeah,
it. So let's talk about you for a minute now.
yeah.
Where did it all begin for you, right? Because I feel like there was a journey right before the your feature film, and then it kind of like took off from there.
hmm What year did we meet? Did we meet like in 2007?
No, no,
Was
no,
it
no,
was
no,
it
no,
around
no,
that
no, no,
time?
no. The
What year
film had
did we
just,
meet?
so it was around 2005, 2006.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I recently, because it's
Yeah.
crazy. Like you were saying, it's 2 decades, and it's true. It's been a long journey, and so there's always chapters, right? So my first chapter, I remember, I came to New York. I forgot what the movie was, but Damon Wayans was in it. Lisa Kudrow was in it, and it was background work, and it was at the United Palace, which is like 5 blocks from my house, and it was just background work. And I went, and anything that I can gravitate to, as an individual that just came from Connecticut to get experience, I went over there and I started talking to some other Latino background actors. And that's when I met Preston Lopez, who at the time had a public access show for probably 6, 7 years. And I started hanging out with him and I started watching. He has to create content every week. Every week he has a show, and I'd follow him. He would do sketches. This is the time where you got the big ass cameras. You have to borrow from M&N for public access. And then I'm watching him on 59th Street editing. And it started to give me a little bit of that bug, because I'm seeing that there is that opportunity and that possibility. And then around that same time, I had a friend of mine who was interning for Calixto Chinchilla from the Latino Film Festival. And she pushed me for a couple of years, because we're talking about the
Remember.
time where it was migente.com, where that was a time where there was a lot of Latinos going on there, but it was a lot of creatives. Like any platform, you're going to have people who are visionary that want to join this site. Because at that time, it was like AOL, and then
MySpace.
there was
Was it
Black
MySpace came out
Planet,
yet?
and it was just a
No,
different.
this is before.
No, this is a couple years before MySpace. MySpace is like 2000, maybe 3, 4. So she was telling me, like, look, you're putting funny content on miente.com. You should look into talking to the person I interned, which was Calixto. And you know how it is when you don't have that one foot in the door. You're like, I'll get to it. And then finally, I did go to the Latino Film Festival, which was the year where my friend's sister is an author, Angie Cruz, who's done about 4 or 5 books. And I went to in 2003, and that was when Manny Perez
You are
was there,
dropping,
and he just
dropping
had
names.
Washington
Yeah,
Heights, the
and it's
film.
funny. I know, like, go
Yo,
ahead.
dude,
I'm
it's
sorry.
crazy.
Because
Yeah,
I always tell
no, no,
people,
no, no,
like,
no. So,
a lot of
so
times, even with me doing all these interviews, a lot of times when, if you hear names or if you see people on the interview, these are people that I've known for a long time. So, like, they're just now,
yeah,
like, the general public
yeah,
is just now getting to acquainted with them, but they've been in this for a while.
yeah, man. I mean, so I go 2003. Okay, sure, whatever. 2004, I literally dedicated that whole week, because the festival is a whole week. I literally went to Dominican night. I literally was networking. And when I left when the festival wrapped on a Sunday after the award ceremony and stuff, I told myself, I gave myself like a contract. I was like, yo, I'm putting something in next year. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna do it. And that's where, like, I kind of signed that contract with myself. I'm like, I'm going full throttle. And I wrote like 3 outlines to short films, right? So I did 3 of them. And shout outs to Chris Delgado, who eventually became the producer and the director, and which I like to say is the personality A, the alpha in the project. That there was no way, no matter what, I was turning back. We were going to do this. Like, he was going to push me. And we went, I finished writing the feature by the end of 2004. And then the beginning of 2005, I put the casting out on Craigslist, actors,
Backstage.
was it
Is it backstage?
what's it? Backstage. Whew,
The
yes,
paper, the
backstage.
paper,
Wow.
not
Fact checking.
backstage.com. The
So
paper.
I went ahead,
Yeah.
the paper, no, the physical paper, and did the casting for a couple of months. I always said, and this is another turning point, like, I did not see myself as the lead, as Juan Bago. I just wanted to be behind the scenes to make sure we complete this. And eventually I got to a point where I'm like, all right, we're doing this independently. We're literally shooting weekends and some evenings. And it's pretty demanding, especially if you're going to be doing some weekends, or if we're shooting something on a Thursday to like 1 in the morning. I mean, that lead is going to be demanding. So I was like, you know what? I'll do it. I know the role. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Finished. We completed it. And then the next year we submitted it to the Latino Film Festival. We sold out. And then from that point on, I haven't looked back. I pivoted. I didn't go to do other features. There was such a community of individuals that made the film possible. And there were a community of people that came that I connected with that were doing different projects, including Lose Control, where that's Jerry after doing the feature with me. That's where I met Jamie. That's where I met like JW
Lose Control. For those who don't know,
like, it was just
explain exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So crazy enough, Lose Control was like the second variation of this sketch group that was performing live in the Bronx, and Chulisi went ahead and took reign and was like, okay, this is going to be my troupe, with a producer. And this is at the time, this is 2006. This is, yo, dude, my dude, this was like a reality show. There was like 15 of us in the cast. Like every time it was a rehearsal, it was competition to see who's going to be able to perform, because they did it at Broadway Comedy Club on 53rd and 8th. And it was every 2 weeks. But in every 2 weeks, you weren't guaranteed to be in the show. Like these rehearsals were competitive. And so we were like, that's why we were getting our chops. That's why by the time when we fast forward to Room 28 and we were doing the live performances, I always told Jamie and Jerry, by rehearsing every single week, performing twice a month, you know, the acting tool,
Jerry
the
Diaz,
improv tool
by the way, was on the show. It's,
and so that was
Mike's cousin. And right, and Jamie is just
my cousin, my blood
brilliant,
cousin.
you know.
Like, and so here we are. We're part of this comedy troupe, but it, you know, Phil, you know the deal, man. In this industry, you need to get reps, and you sometimes beggars can't be choosers. When you get the opportunity, that it might not be the perfect opportunity, but if you're able to have a commitment where you're going to rehearse, be off book, perform live, you need that muscle, and then from there you can grow. And so that was a period in time when we were in that comedy troupe, young, that we were able to perform. And then I think that extra incentive and not being guaranteed to perform every show kind of even got us to even bring our A game.
Well, let me ask you a question,
even
Mike.
more.
Have you ever had a rep?
And then, well, I have a rep now, but I've had, see this, if we're going to get on a deeper level, I think for me,
give me one, here's why I'm asking.
So hard
if you've ever had a rep, because from me watching you throughout the years, you have gained access to certain places and certain people that one would need a rep to get access to. But you did it like on your own recognizance. You've done it all on your own. You know, those relationships you built on your own. So you kind of been artist and management for a long time. So that's what made me ask you if you ever really had a rep, because I've kind of watched you knock down those doors by yourself.
No, I just until recently, and it's because I'm in a different chapter in my life as far as having rep. But no, it's always been that hustle. It's always been, you know, part of my success and my growth has been that I've hustled since day one. Look, I mean, when your first project ever is a feature film that you have to shoot and put it in festivals and go out there, I was hardwired. And maybe in some ways I was too hard-headed to have rep, because I felt like I didn't have the patience. Like if I wanted to meet somebody, we're going to do something, I just go out and do it. Like I had no fear. Not to say I have fear now, but it was just that younger version of me was like, yo, let's do it. Like, you know, when you first start off doing a feature, when people are like, yeah, right. I mean, you just got to go out there. And I'm wired like that. So I think for a very long time, and, you know, that's the other thing, too. Like, I've just been sort of like a hybrid socialite. Like, I loved networking. I love, you know, meeting people. I mean, I love connecting people. So for me, No, all of
But
it was just
I
the
gotta say
grind
this
and
about you though. Like
going out there.
there's two sides, there's the two faces to you. There's the face that you see when you perform,
Yes.
and there's the face that you see when you're
Mm-hmm.
networking, which is the business side of you. And it's like two different people, you know. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to watch you on camera
Yeah.
and then to meet you in person, I remember I forgot what year it was. It was the New York Latino Film Festival, and we had went, and I think Luis Guzman had done a film, and it was like a talk back, and it was like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, everybody's kind of mingling
Mm-hmm.
and socializing, and there's Mike in the back in the corner, kind of just sitting there like watching, and I'm like, Mike, and you like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm like, yo, this cat
Yeah.
is like, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
that's why I refer to you as Oz, because I feel like you're very calculated.
You sort of have to be, you know. I mean, oh, especially if I'm like not having representation. I like, I don't know, man. Like this industry, you know this. This industry is very complicated. It's you're dealing with arts and then business and then just
Yes.
and I like to say the mechanics, right? Because when you're creating something, so there's just a lot. So for me, you know, and that's why probably the most difficult projects for me is when I'm producing and I'm acting in it and I'm acting as a character, because I'm method in a sense where like I'll stay in character the whole time. And sometimes it took me a while to adapt or to trust to have people that I'm like, yo, I'm in character. Let me rock, because some of my worst performances in the past have been where like action, and I'm still thinking about like, yo, food is late. You know, like this actor's a half hour for the next scene that you know what I'm saying? So like for me, you've seen that. So it took a few years to be around a team that I can trust, that I could say, all right, I'm gonna put my 1,000% into that thing, because what's the point then? And when I'm in front of the camera, if I'm concerned, you know, and that's the worst. Like when something is lingering and you just can't, you could see it in the performance. So yeah, there definitely is
How,
two me,
yeah,
Juan Bago and Michael
totally two
Diaz.
people. But how did you get access to like I remember seeing you doing something for NBC. It was connected to SNL. How did that all come together?
So back in 2016, I was asked to interview Oz Rodriguez of SNL, and um, there's a very big blog still to this day, which part of my buzz in the Latino community was because of this blog called Remolacha, which is like beets in Spanish. And that guy, the founder, was like, "Listen, I want you to go to 30 Rock and interview Oz Rodriguez. He's Dominican." And I'm like, "There's a Dominican in SNL," and yeah, and so I went and interviewed Oz, and we stayed in touch. And kudos to Oz, because Oz was like, "Yo, I want to get more Latinos. I want to get more background that reflects New York City." And so he asked me to be in background. And I've said it before. It's like for somebody in sketch comedy to watch this machine was dope, because it was just watching, 14-hour shoot that it's not going to take 2 weeks to come out. It's literally going to come out Saturday. So many moving parts. We know when you're doing things independently, some of the most important things is your temperament. And so when you're dealing with so much pressure to be very cool and chill internally, I don't know how Oz was, but like externally, very chill with a lot of moving parts and a crazy deadline. So that kudos to Oz for having invite me to do background work. And when I get my 1.2 second cameo that I can screenshot, zoom in, and put it on Instagram, that's the bonus. But just to be on there and see some of the hosts that were in these sketches, it's just fascinating, because it's like when
Yeah,
you're doing something
yeah,
independent, there's a crew of 5 or 6, 7 people. That's one thing. But when there's like 50, 60 people on set, and they're action, and they're doing from some different angles, and then you go and you turn on SNL, you're like, oh my God, it looks completely different from what I experienced on set. You really, really appreciate the art even more, especially in how with Room 28 and all the sketch comedy we did, to watch this really was like puts things in
Room 28
perspective.
has pretty much that core group, that core cast has remained solid throughout the years. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. And it's like I'll never forget when I was like, yo, we gotta bring the crew back. It was Cypher Sounds who had this improv show that was part of UCB, and he had Donald Glover. I went and I took Jamie. I was like, yo, and Donald Glover was doing the improv. It was Cypher Sound. This is late 2013, and it was probably like 4 or 5 years that Room 20 wasn't performing, and I was like, bro, we gotta, we looked around and I was like, who's doing sketch comedy right now in New York City? And we brought the crew. We brought in Rachel. We brought Anthony Palmini, who is the secret sauce because the voiceover, the editing,
Rachel La
just
Loca.
everything. And
I'm
so
sorry, I got you talking too fast. I'm
the
gonna give
beauty
shout
of it
outs,
is like,
but you know.
yeah. Rachel La
Yeah.
Loca, Andrew Casanova, Anthony Palmini, and the beauty of it was like it's like the Voltron, right? I mean, we really all have different, distinct on stage skills, and also we have in front of the camera because we were doing sketches as well. Like that was our thing, where it's like you come to our show, you're gonna watch videos and you're gonna watch us on stage. You're gonna get both. But it was such a great time and experience. Never forget when we performed in Los Barrio in front of like over 500 people back in 2016. And to do sketch comedy in front of that huge crowd is like something that you can't ever forget. But it was such a great experience, and it was just awesome because it was like sort of like how sports, where you had different types of players that fit in there and just make this complete beautiful thing. And then the other thing that too that really separated us is that it was a theatrical experience. We did the costumes, we did the sort of the sets and everything. So when you came in there, you really were committed to watch this whole show because it was just so well put together. And that's kudos to Jerry, who was the director
Were
and had his
you a
vision of
part
how the
of?
lineup
I
of the
can't
show would
remember the
go.
year, but there was this big campaign for the festival one year, and it was a huge campaign. You know which campaign I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that
You're talking
2008?
about 2008. Yeah, you're talking about one where
Yeah,
like we were
video,
print
print. It
and
was
we
all
were on
the
like
campaign that year
commercial
was
and all that.
insane.
Yeah,
That was 08.
yeah. 2008, man. I mean,
Glennis Javier.
Jerry and Jamie, um, Glennis Javier was in that, and then I was not in the print, but I was in the commercial with Jamie. Jerry was in it, and Jerry and Jamie wrote. They were part writers of the thing too, so they were like part
I gotta get
writers.
Jamie
They
on here.
performed,
Jamie, come to the
and
VIP. Then I have
yeah,
you're gonna
Jamie.
have
No,
the three,
definitely, Jamie,
the
Jamie,
three that really do it. Seriously,
the Three
great.
Amigos. Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
honestly could not remember the year. I couldn't believe. I was gonna say 2010, 2011, but no, 2008, man. I mean, and it just
Time
doesn't
flies,
wait for
bro.
anybody. It just goes. I
No,
was
not at all.
privileged enough, and for Mike to come and grab me up and help cast background for a short called The Tickets. And
The tickets,
I gotta say
the
this.
tickets, the
We did the
tickets, the
background
tickets, the
stuff. That
tickets.
was great. But I remember there was one actor, Armin Garo, who had done some extensive work. And I remember, I forgot. I think I had you come in to do auditions for the network. I was with Paul Michael at the time, and I was like, you're like, I'm gonna get
Mm-hmm.
this guy. I'm like, Mike, I don't know if you can get this guy. You're like, no, I'm gonna get. Yeah, but I'm like, yo, Mike, he's union. Like, how you gonna get? You like, no, I'm gonna get.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get this guy, and it was crazy. It was crazy, and he got him. He ended up coming in doing the
yeah,
tickets.
yeah, yo. And it's crazy because before the tickets, But then after the tickets,
He
yo,
was like
Armin
the
was like,
Sicilian.
he is. And look, man, let me tell you that Armin being in that, like, as a filmmaker, and I directed that. Yo, dude, having Armin on set is nerve wracking because he just sees things completely different when he's there. Like everything is
Yep.
like it's like no fucking around, bro. So like it got me on my toes because here's a dude who's doing it, and it's like you can't fuck around. If it's like he's gonna just be like,
Yeah.
yo, you know what? Why am I doing this? Right after getting him to commit. And that was such a fun project, man.
Yeah.
A lot of learning lessons, but such a fun
Yeah. Yeah. You
project, yo.
always seem to amaze me at that. You know, I think my takeaway from that is always believe that you can get it, even if other people feel like it's impossible.
Yeah, man. The worst thing is no. And you know what's so crazy, man? I can admit this. Like, I feel like now I that as we had, I said this before. It's like unfortunately so many scenarios, and we understand like with Armin, I was like I'm getting him right, but there are just certain things I'm blind to see that gives me this
Yeah.
optimistic view of I'm gonna get him. That now, if I'm asking Armin, like if I was to ask Armin now, I'm like, all right, hold on, I'm gonna have to talk to his manager, his agent. He might be doing this. I'm gonna have to do this. So there's more of these internal voices. Obviously, I gotta plan things out. But back then, it was just like, okay, you can't do it, fine. But I just did not have any fear whatsoever because my intent, right? My intent was
Yeah.
not like
Yeah. Yeah.
no
Yeah. Yeah.
sneaky stuff. It's just I wanted to do it short.
Yeah.
I think it's really good
I
and you'll be
miss that
perfect for it. And
fearlessness,
that's
though.
that.
I miss that fearlessness of being able to do that. I feel like now I'm more apprehensive before approaching people in the business. That
Yeah, man. It it, it, it's a thing. Look, we sometimes when you have sometimes it's cool when you work with someone like in their 20s that are going up
Yeah.
because they have that like I don't care. But it's the nature of the beast, right? Like you just are gonna be in a position where again, so many scenarios play out in your mind that even before you commit, you're like, I don't wanna, So it is what it is. But those were some fun times when I was just, I I'll never forget, even for Juan Bago, I wanted to get Angie Martinez to be in the movie. I had Luis Jimenez, who was like the #1 radio host in New York City, because at the time, Spanish radio was big. And, but I wanted to get Angie Martinez too. And it's so funny that I almost got her, but she doesn't at the time, she wasn't doing cameos or anything like that. But I was like, all right. So, I still got Luis, but it was like, I was trying to get Roberto Vanderpool to be in the movie because that was the thing I didn't even finish telling you. For me, the first version of Juan Bago was 40 minutes. There was so many new scenes that we added. It became like an hour and a half. I had it to be an hour and 40 because I had a scene with Roberto Vanderpool that I wanted to
That
put
was.
in. So it was crazy, bro. If that get stopped, it would have been 3 hours.
So, tell me
freaking...
about the new podcast.
Yeah, man.
Translators.
Translators podcast with Jamie Fernandez. Shout outs to Hema Productions and Diana
What
Dotel and
made you want to do it?
Natalia and Aggie. Well, we had back in 2015 was the second year of Room 28, and Jamie. Shout out to Jamie because Jamie was a comedy nerd, and the comedy nerd in him led to consuming podcasting. This is back in 2015. And he was like, yo, you know what we should do, like a podcast thing, like an actor studio. And I knew shout outs to DJ Iggy, who had his living room converted into a space that it was like a studio. And he said, yo, dude, come over here. And we would go and we did actors. We interviewed J.W. Cortez, April Lee Hernandez.
These are people I
Castillo,
used to we used to see each other at audition rooms, and that's one thing that I miss that doesn't happen. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It just
Mm-hmm.
April. I was casting. I'm sorry,
No,
really
no, no,
quick.
no, no.
I was casting a project called Offer
Yeah,
Sit
yeah, yeah,
Down,
yeah.
with Stephen Dorff and James Wood.
Mm-hmm.
And April was one of the people I brought in for that audition, and she booked.
Oh man, that's awesome, bro. You know, that's the thing about it. Like, you know, people ask, yo,
Yeah.
what's the key of success? Just don't stop, right? And that's why it's proof, because a lot of these individuals that I've known for 10, 15,
And
18,
you
19
never
years, they've
know,
been doing
and you
it.
never
You know, like
know
this
who's going
whole.
to look at your stuff, right? Because I had worked in casting. I
Mm-hmm.
was doing casting also. So you never know who's, you know. So if I see my people, I'm bringing them in.
Mm-hmm. 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 And then you do the whole Leonardo DiCaprio, like, oh, that's my homie right there. Sophie gets annoyed because Sophie, I'll be like, there'll be a show on Showtime or like HBO or Netflix. And she'll be like, let me guess,
Yeah.
you know him, her, right? I'm like, yes, that's da 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 da. But anyways, full circle back again. So Translators, we did it. It was like an hour episode, and we just went through the whole journey. We had Kareem, we had Desmond. I don't pronounce his last name correctly, but Desmond Burgos from You're the Worst. So we had a dope. We had Dominic Colon, actor Dominic Colon, because now we just had writer Dominic Colon, but we had actor Dominic Colon. And it was such a lot of fun. But again, we were not with a commitment of being super consistent. We did eight episodes, and life got busy. You know, the setup was not conducive of like, let's have a long-term commitment. Full circle, we went. Latinos All Out podcast came out in 2017. And then COVID came around. I left Latinos Aloud. And then a year and a half later, Diana was like, look, you know, Translators podcast, you know, what's up? And I spoke to Jamie, and we're like, well, we're going to bring it back, but we're going to bring it back. Our audience definitely needs to not just only see the actor's journey, but the creative's journey. And it will with principles, that with the 3 Ps, which is the passion, the path, and the process. Because a lot of times, look, when I would watch Actor Studio, I was like, yo, like, you hear this, and I'm like, yo, really? I thought it was this, and this. And it's like, no, it's like certain things happen. You don't have one path. And so for us, we wanted to just focus 35, 40 minutes of what was the moment that you were like, I want to do this. And then what was the path that you went into? And now that you're doing it, what's your process? Like, how do you maintain to be there? How do you stay professional in what you do? And so we wanted to really condense it, make it evergreen so that you can listen to it 3-4 years from now. You know, no one comes to the show to promote anything, so nothing is dated. It's really, let's talk to you as an individual. You're not coming here because you have a movie coming out or you have a project coming out and that could consume a little bit of the short-term thing. We want to know the whole thing. We want to know how you started. And it's fun. And, you know, we did it in the sense of, it's not a weekly show. No, it's a first season, 8 episodes. Each episode is a different time. And God willing, we'll come on another season, and then we'll do different topics. Author and, you know, theater. Right. We didn't have someone that was in theater. And so it was really dope because, again, as a creative, it's hearing these stories was awesome, man. Like, it's just, there's luck involved, and there's sometimes a failure, a current failure that ends up being the reason that it's a success, right? We sometimes get to the point where, can you hear me? Okay, hold on. My headphone came out. Let me just put the volume up. Sometimes you have to pivot, and that pivot is the blessing that gets you to that path.
Where will we be able to hear the podcast?
Currently, right now, it's on all the platforms: iHeart, Spotify. We have the video on YouTube. This week, we're having Gina Brion talking about being a comedian and her journey. And then after that, we have 2 more episodes, and then hopefully we'll shoot another season of another 8 episodes. But right now, we're at episode 5
Well, I'm
of
excited for you
the
guys, man.
season.
Congratulations on Translators. I hope it's a
Thank
huge
you.
success. I'm sure it would be. I mean, everything you touch turns to gold. So
Oh,
no,
come,
oh no,
stop.
I'm being honest. I just think that you're a genius at what you do. You know, you're one of the people, one of my peers who I consider to be a person who knows how to make things happen. So
Phil, still enjoyed when we used to have coffee at X Cafe
okay,
outlooking Washington Heights, and we would
that's
just have
right.
really dope conversations,
Yeah,
right? That was pre-social media where, you could DM and text. Like, no, that was just
and
like,
kick.
let's have a couple of really good coffee and just
Yeah.
talk industry. And those are really those moments that I cherish, because it was so much fun to have those
Now I
conversations
gotta
and,
ask
and,
you
and
five
bug out.
questions that I ask all my guests, but when they come on, all right, and you can answer them however you want to, right? And just take your time. So let me ask you this
Yeah.
first question: what do you know about the industry now that you thought you knew when you first entered?
Um, People are watching. People are watching. People, you could put something out and 18 views. Even my dog agrees. And they're watching. Everyone is a consumer. And so I learned that later on some of my projects, when people were like, you know that I saw this. And I'm like, wait, what? No, why? Because we're so
Yeah,
programmed, if no one hearts it or comments, that no one sees it. So in the beginning, when you're in your little silo and you create something, you think you're in a bubble, but in reality, people are watching. And so that's what you sort of have to keep in mind. And when you're putting something out there, that people are watching, you can't slack off. Everything has to be on point, because if you start to dip in the quality, those same people are watching. They're like, So yeah, that's one of the things that I
yeah,
now know
very,
in
very
the
true.
in the recent
What
years.
advice would you give your 19-year-old self?
Woo! So 19. So if I lie about my age, that's I was 19 in 2015. I'm just kidding. You know what? The 19-year-old me. Wow, that's a great question, because if you think about it, like right now, me knowing what I know, like 19-year-old version of me only knew John Leguizamo, right? Everyone uses a lot. That name just keeps resonating, and everyone brings it up. Um, I would tell the 19-year-old version of me, shut the fuck up with your anxiety, keep going. It's excitement and it's the fear, but everyone else is dealing with it. Just go. As a matter of fact, fail. Just go. Trust me,
Yeah,
because it did hold me back for a while. That imposter syndrome, especially when you don't see any, there's nobody that you could say, oh, this person, that person, and get to a point where you could say, hey, come here for a second. You don't have that. So I would say, shut the fuck up, just go ahead and just do it and fail. Trust me, in a couple of years, you'll thank me. So that would be my advice to my next year. Well, actually, wait, I'm a dad now, so I wouldn't. Okay, let me take that back. I wouldn't say shut the fuck up. I'm like, come here. Look, it's okay. All right? It's
right,
okay.
right,
I'm not gonna be
right.
toxic. I'm not gonna tell you to shut the fuck up. All right? I'm so sorry. That was wrong with me. I meant, look, we all deal with anxiety. Just go out there and fail. It's
I
all
could
right.
dig it. I could dig it.
That's
So tell me,
yeah.
what do you want your legacy to be?
Legacy. Great question. I'm not saying great question because a lot of people be like, great question. No. I think consistent and quality, and just did not quit. I honestly want to do this until I'm like 85. And as a matter of fact, if you see a lot of individuals in theater,
Steven Spielberg, all these guys. I'm not saying in the level, but I'm talking about like the age. I was talking about this with my wife the other day. I was like, yo, I think part of this success of being old is like keeping the biggest muscle in your body active. And so I want to do that. I want to be consistent, and when it's my last day of doing whatever, you could always look back as like, hey, I was always very consistent
I
in
believe that
the art
that's
that
your
I was
gift to the
creating.
world, though, right? That's our gift to the world is what we create, what we leave behind, who we inspire.
Yeah.
It's very
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm.
What brings you joy?
It is. Well, now my son, even when he smacks me, uh, what brings me joy as the connective tissue that we are as fellow artists is the success that we are having. Of especially what we just finished talking about, that there's a lot of individuals we know for decades. And so for me to see them thrive and do this brings me joy because I respect their grind and journey and failures and those conversations maybe a decade ago were like, yo, I don't know. And you know, I know particularly right now a couple of people that I know that have been doing it for a minute, and they are at another level, and I remember the conversations of frustration, especially Latino actors here in New York. If you're not doing, you know, Law and Order or these type of shows, you know, where can you go? And it's sometimes really difficult, but to see us collectively you know, succeed brings me joy because I truly understand the grind and a lot of work that goes behind it. And you know, social media programs you, and when you put a
Yeah,
post, you're always
yeah,
putting the success. We're not sharing
yeah,
all of the failures, right? So it's filtered. But when you know these individuals and you see what they've gone through,
totally.
it feels good, man. It feels
What are
really
you
good.
grateful for?
I am grateful. Oh, man, like I'm grateful to still have the opportunities. I'm grateful for my friendships that I have. I'm grateful for some of the people that I work with that are, you know, I think that when you're writing and when you're directing and when you're doing stuff, you only get better in age. Like we're still up here. So I'm grateful for the relationships that I have and the people that I'm working with that are continuing to grow, and we're really creating some stuff. Like when I look at Juan Bago, the movie from White Brown, I'm like,
Yeah,
ugh. Like some of the
yeah,
stuff from 10 years ago, I'm like, oh, I, I would
yeah.
love to meet that Mike and be like, what? So I am grateful for the people that I work with, that we put stuff out there that I'm proud of, and their
How
skills
important is
and just
community
the
to you?
connection. I mean, it's everything. You know, a lot of times we see things. I mean, sometimes it happens with artists where they come out of nowhere. They're part of the machine, but they can't really pinpoint where they came from. And it's easy just to be a one hit wonder, or like sort of not sustain stability as far as like consistency, because there isn't the community. You have to have a community. You have to have those individuals. What we've been saying, oh, I knew this person. This person is doing that, because part of the community is where you perform for the first time. Part of the community are the people that they saw a different version of you, that you have growth. And when you don't have that, sometimes you can't maintain a humbleness, because those are the individuals that saw you more flawed as an artist. So when it's very isolated and you're out there, it's tough. And so you sort of have to have representation of your community. And I think
I
that that's
think, you
super
know,
duper important.
the takeaway that I've learned throughout the years is the importance of work-life balance, right? Like you got to understand that this business is what it is. It's a job, but then you have to have a moment where you can, like any other job, you have to have a moment where you can just clock out. Because if you don't clock
Mm-hmm.
out, it'll
Mm-hmm.
consume you. You need to have that life,
I mean,
and
I
to see
learned.
you now with a wife and family, that's the thing that fills your heart the most. So you can tap out if you need to.
Yeah, I mean, look, man. Especially in the times when we first met, I didn't know when to turn it
Yeah.
off, man, and it affected me in many ways. And so it was that thing there was never enough, and so like you just get consumed with it. And I got called out in my past relationships because and this is back in the day when it was the BlackBerry where smoke would be coming out of my phone because I was just like this and I'm hanging out and I'm like this and it's like, dude, really? And then it was annoying as must have been so annoying to date me because all I talked
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
was constantly
Yeah.
work. And it's like, ugh, right? And so now I'm forced to like, I got no choice now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm at my moments of like, he ain't falling. Hold on, let me just send an email real quick. If I hear a boom, I know something happened, and I was just like, whatever. They no cameras around here. All right, wife ain't gonna see that. But it really is something that is so important because, like, people look. I've been disconnecting from social media from back. I saw a Facebook post from 2009. This April, I'm disconnecting from social media for a while. Why? Because as somebody that creates and consumes, sometimes we consume too much
True.
and then we're not able to create, right? How do we have that laptop open and
Yeah.
we have tabs of Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all these things, and we can never disconnect? So I think it's super important to create a balance. And like, for example, I forgot who was saying this, is like sometimes when you just live life is when you create the content, the best content. You live in life. So I think you're right. And I failed miserably for years because I just didn't know. I am
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
0 or 100 type of person. You're
Right.
either going to be 0 or 100 for me. And that's where I failed miserably in the past. And now it's more of a balance and I get to enjoy stuff and
Yeah.
say no more, right? Now I can just blame myself for everything. Like, yo, you know what? I won't be here, but yo, it's like I can't
Right. Right.
because my son. But your son goes to sleep at 7.
Right.
Yeah, but yo, he
Right.
probably wakes up at 9, and now I gotta feed him and nah. So it's easier now, right? But no, it's so important too because you talk about the balance. If you're saying yes to everything, you're not gonna have enough time. So that's also a lesson I've learned. Is like, look, Phil, like if you think about it, sometimes we're like, oh, I want to do like this much, but you always have to leave a little bit of space of the most spontaneous thing.
Yeah.
Somebody can hit you out of nowhere and be like, yo, I got a project for you.
Yeah.
And if you got 5 things, you can't. So I've learned to sort of consolidate, put more focus on that, and then leave a little space. If something comes in there, I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Sometimes the
Let's do
universe,
this.
God, the
But
universe can align things in your life that you could have never orchestrated on your own. Never.
Yeah.
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 Well, brother,
Absolutely
I want
agree
to
to
say
that, man.
thank you for joining me
Definitely.
tonight. I appreciate this conversation. It's been long overdue. I miss it. Truly. And,
Let's have
absolutely.
coffee, bro. Let's pick a
Yeah.
nice Starbucks spot and let's just have coffee with the couches facing
That'll
each
work.
other. That's the key. We have to have the couches facing each other
Bring the
and
sun. Bring the sun too. It don't matter.
oh yeah. How old is he?
Yeah.
13
Come
months?
on.
Yeah, he can have coffee. I had coffee. I had Bustelo like at 9 months. Whatever. Although it'll make him hyper. You know what's so funny? The funny thing about it is, and this is crazy. When he sees that I have the headphones on, now mind you, he's been doing this for like 2 months now. When he sees that I have like the headphones on or I have somebody on speaker, he doesn't.
Yo,
He goes,
look, he knows when somebody's
the
taking your attention
whole
away.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's there like. I'm like, my man, you don't say nothing. You see me, I'm on the phone, and then you want to go,
Brother,
So,
I want to say thank you.
yeah,
Yo,
man.
you know what? Also, thank you for
Thank you.
bringing Guru Enlightenment into my life. I don't know if you know that. Did you know that or no?
Yes. I did
Yes,
not, but I
yes,
do
yes.
know her of
Um,
her.
for
Yes.
years now. I remember when my grandmother died and I went to go see her. It was she kind of helped me out through a very difficult time. So, and you know me, like I
Yeah.
roll on the
Yeah.
low, and then when people see me do stuff, I just pop up and put it on social media. But I don't believe in talking too much um, publicly. It's better to just allow that space to be private, and then leave all the public stuff for what the world even cares about. So
Hey, man, more people should do that because it's true. You sort of, I mentioned it to Frank Nibbs years ago, back in
yeah,
like 2010. I believe in digital
yeah,
energy. We are wired through here. And so, at that time, they're like, digital energy. I'm like, yeah, digital energy. If right now you and I got in an argument and I'm cursing you out, people are seeing that are
yeah.
going to resonate, especially how negativity works. So that digital energy, you have to kind of conceal it. Don't let it, So the way you do that, you put it out
Yeah,
when you put it out, and
truly.
that's it. It's perfect.
Mike,
Thinking that way.
thank you. Let's talk. Let's get together soon.
This is awesome.
Tell the wife,
Yeah,
hug the baby
definitely.
for me. Love you guys. Stay blessed. Stay connected.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, the dog is
he's
up.
sleeping right now, so he's good. But my dog's gonna wake
All right.
him up. All right, bro. We'll talk.